on.
Vaisai, welcome back. We're holding at Yerushalmi Pesachim. We are Samach Amud Beis, yeah? The Shir should be a zechus for all those who need every zechus that we need, that everyone who needs zechuyah, so it should be a zechus for them. Ad Kadun, I say Pesach. Now, we've spoken about those who keep Kom Pesach, that Tumas Tahim is permitted for them, and then, for the person who brings the carbon and the Kohen. Now, what about Nazir Minayin? How do we know that Tumas Tahim, this underground Tumah, is permitted not only for the Nazir himself, but the Kohen as well? So after he brings his Kabbalas, we find out the Kohen who did the carbon was Tameh with this underground Tumah that sits in Meranzeh. Rabbi Yosef Shemruchista ben Safin Meima. So they wanted to say that the Nazir is different from Pesach, because a Nazir, Tumas Tahim, is learned from a pasuk Yomas Meis Olav, now Lashon Olav, so that the Heter was only for a Nazir himself, but not on not on the Kohen. But that which we've learned, he Nazir, he I suppose, they have the same din. So it tells me whatever is permitted for one is permitted for the other. So since Kom Pesach is Hutra Tumas Tahim, also for the Kohen doing the Avodah, so also in the case of Nazir, this Tumah is permitted also for the Kohen doing the Avodah. Okay. Ezehu Keva HaTahim. What is the situation of Keva HaTahim that we say we don't know who it is, no one's ever known about this burial? Hamesh Nikba, after a dead person is buried, and someone goes across, and he's bekash, he's like the person's hidden away in like the straw, the stubble in the ground, of a tevan, or a straw, whatever, of a mound of earth, or pebbles. So this person might have fallen, and the mound fell on the person of its own accord, and no one never knew about this burial, and he died there, and that is Tumas Tahim, Tumah which was not known. If, however, the mace was hidden in water, a dark place, when the kikes alive amongst the rocks, holes in the rocks, where light doesn't reach, that does not make it Keva Tahim. So, although in this situation the tumah is not noticeable easily, but you could look and see from afar, you could see it. Yeah, if someone's walking past, it's not considered unknown. Kol Haloshon, the rule is so if you can't move the person, it makes the mace hidden there to be Keva Tahim. If you could have moved him by seeing it, then it doesn't. Now, we mentioned straw and things that cause Tumas Tahim. Sounds like these are things that you don't move them from place to place, they stay where they are. So the kashrut teven so you can't move them. Are these things that you can't move them? If that's the case, Masnisa to like Rabbi Yossi. The brisa is not like the view of Rabbi Yossi. Now, Rabbi Yossi said, now imagine a person fills up his house with straw, all the way up to the roof. Or bidloi. And you intend to leave it there. You're never going to move it. Then batel. We've learned the straw is like part of the house. And it's considered the house is closed up on the inside, full of straw. The house is completely full. Now, if a dead body is brought in the house, the tumah goes through the roof, like any tumah, where there's no aisle on top of it, because we look as if the straw is fixed in its place forever, and that's if a person decided to leave the straw there, right? Without bittul, the straw is not considered fixed in its place. So the brisa, we brought a brisa which says that straw is something which you can't move, you're going to leave it forever, doesn't fit in with Rabbi Yossi. The brisa says a mace which is under the straw, and no one knew about the person, is Tumas Tahim, because straw is something which people don't move. So here as well, it's considered davar kavua forever. And according to this brisa, the house which is filled with straw all the way to the roof, the space of the house is batel. That doesn't be, so the space is batel. So basically, it's not like Rabbi Yossi who holds it's not batel unless you actually be mevatel it. So the question is, does the straw stay there or does it not stay there? And we seem to have a contradiction. And Rabbi Yossi says, not only if you mevatel it, but otherwise it wouldn't stay there. And that seems to be like another Tanu who argues, if you fill it with straw till the top is batel, even if you didn't intend clearly to leave it there. So we don't actually answer the question. The brisa doesn't fit in like the view of Rabbi Yossi. Now we bring Masechet Eruvin. Now, if you have a ditch between two courtyards, 10 tvachim deep and 4 tvachim wide, they have to separate and become two separate areas for an Eruv. They can't join up because you've got a massive void in between them, right? You've got this ditch in between. Now, each chatzeh will make their own Eruv chatzeres. They can't join together. Now, it's the same thing even if the charetz is full of straw or stubble, whatever, they can't join together. It's not considered closed up because of the straw, because you're going to move it away. So according to the Gis, Harteven a bit like bitel. So if you're mevatel the straw, it doesn't help. The Mishnah says the stam that even in a situation where the owner of the straw said clearly, "I want to leave the straw there forever," the straw is not batel and is not considered closed in, because teven is considered something which has got a use, and you've the sasmai basically is there for removing, despite whatever the owner says. And the Gemara continues that it's not like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says if you're mevatel it is mevutel. So that Mishnah can't be Rabbi Yossi. He says, Tumas Mace, if you fill the house and we know that you're never going to move it, then the space is gone. The roof is not mild to be mafsik the tumah. The tumah goes straight up. And bittul hateben does help. So according to Rabbi Yossi, the straw, you can be mevatel it. So Rabbi Yossi Ribun, b'shem Rav Chisda, he says, in Erevin Divra Akoli, that's according to everyone, even according to Rabbi Yossi. Ma'adu Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yossi said, look, if you don't move the straw, it's considered fixed. That is shabalal. You mix the straw with earth, and it's not fitting for animals to eat it. It's just building materials. And therefore, if you clearly say, I'm going to leave it there, then we say, yeah, he's going to stay there. But the Mishnah is talking about ordinary straw on its own, which you can use for animal food, and therefore is not bittul, doesn't help. Okay. Now, the Gemara says actually, yesh teven shehuka afa. So there is situations of straw which is like earth. V'yesh afa shehuka teven, and earth like straw. Teven she'ena toyochel asil lefanai. So the straw you're not going to move. We know that you've got no purpose for it. You're never going to move it. Hareu afa, then it's considered like earth. And afa shad asil lefanai, so earth that you're going to move, for whatever reason, hareu keteven, then it's got a din like straw. We don't know if the person's going to move it or not, and so on. Okay, now what about, we're going to still discuss Erevin. Now we spoke about the two courtyards, and there's a ditch between them. And even if the ditch is full of straw, then they can't join together. They said, if you cover the straw in the ditch with mats, batel, then the straw is batel, and it's considered closed in, because you've covered it with mats. So you're showing that you're never going to move the straw. So it's considered never going to be removed. Therefore, it's closed in, and now the two courtyards can join together. They're like one courtyard. He said, wait a minute. Milahu, if you fill up the place with mats, we say you're going to move them. Lo batel. Then definitely they're not batel. You're definitely going to use them. You're going to use them for other purposes. You're not going to leave them there. And yet, if you cover the straw with mats, chipah marsala is batel. Then the straw is batel. How can that be? So he says also, milo charias. What about if you filled the ditch with date palm branches? Sricha, well then there's a question. Is that considered closed or not? Is that sealed or not? Maybe it's like straw, which is going to be moved. Or maybe it's got a din like earth, which is not going to be moved. Reb Zrika and Ravami B'Shem Rishon ben Lakish. Afilu, even if the ditch is full of water, of raik or saliva, it's considered closed. So that's what he said. It's still considered closed. Although people don't cross it, nevertheless, the water is mevatel. It's not machitza. Basically, they have to make one eruv. That's what he wants to say. Ezel kevatai. What's considered this underground grave? No one remembers it. Maybe one guy in the world does know about it. And maybe the person who's alive, the one who buried this person, is still alive. So he says no. The person's body was all shriveled, where the legs were next to the head, and that couldn't have been buried by others. So he must have fallen and something fell on him. Right? No one would know about this tumah. Okay. Tiny, we've learned in the Brisa. The only thing that makes the situation kevet tahim ala meis bevad is the head of the is the karbonos is a mace only. On nevela line. Now, as far as nevela, no, we don't say this kul of tumas at time. So a person's nevela, there's a dead animal there, you never knew about it. You put your hand in earth and you bring a Kom Pesach, then you find out you touched the nevela. So are we excluding Tumas Atayim from the Vela? So the person's carbon will be possible. Now we got Kava Chomer, because Maima makes for a dead body which is so severe. Shum Matame Ba'ayel, it's Matame in the same roof. Isaac Kemet Home, there is a leniency of this underground Tumah. Nevela, which is not so much Tumah. Then Shaina Matame Ba'ayel, Aina Din, how much more so should Tasa Kemet Home? And more so should make a leniency of Kemet Home. Le'eza Dava Nema. So for what Indian does it say, Ein Lecha Dava Isa Kemet Home, Ela Mace Bavad? If that's the case, why is it only for a mace? What does he mean? Lahaisi, to exclude Tumah of Zav, which no one ever knew about. We don't have a kula of Tumah Satahim. It's more severe than mace, because it's Matami Mishkav Moshe, what it Zav sits on, right, where he sits on, etc. Whereas mace is not Matami Mishkav Moshe. Okay. Taman Tanina, we've learned in Zvachim. Kol Zvachim Shekibal Daman Zav. If Yisrael receives the blood, Einain, a Kohen is an Einain, it's for Yom. He's been in the mikveh, he needs to wait for sunset. He was a Kohen Hedyot and he didn't wear the right number of clothes. Kippurim, he was Tameh, he needed a carbon and he had not brought the carbon. He didn't wash his hands and feet from the Kiyah. RL is not had bris milah or Tameh or Yoshev, or he's sitting. Standing on things, on animals, on his friend's feet. There's a chatzitza between his Kohen. He's standing on his friend's feet, sort of thing. So he's not standing on the floor. Pasal, that's no good. The elders of the south said, "Betame tumaziva, betuma saras anam kiyamin." This Mishnah, that the person's Kohen's tamei for doing these things, is even not just tamei mace, it's ziva or saras. There's no heta korban sibur. He says even a korban yachid, the sister is not maratza to allow these things. But Tamei Mace, according to the Ramai, the south, he says a Kohen in this mace ain't a machalal. He says, but the avodah is not machalal, even a private korban. Ma'achasha huta, since it's permitted to mace b'klal tumah l'rabim for a public, become Pesach. Since you can push away the tumah guidelines for Pesach for a tzibur, right, when everyone's tamei. And since it's permitted l'konim l'chatzchila korban sibur, that since it's maratz on this tumah b'diavad even with a private korban, and the avodah of the kohen is kosher and the korban is kosher, even though he's not allowed to go ahead and do it. So this is the chiddush of the Chachmei Dorim. What are they saying again? Let's go remind ourselves. They're saying like this: when we say it's possible b'diavad, that's all like tumah ziva, tumah tzaras, but tamei mace for a private korban. Since it's allowed for a community for Korban Pesach, but the Eved, it's okay for an individual. The sits is Maratzeh. So if they went ahead and they were staying up Tameh, or they were standing on some of their friends' feet, or whatever it was, and they did a private Korban for an individual, he says, but the Eved, it is okay. Yeah, it's not Machalal. And that's the big chiddush of these things. They're saying it's only Ziva and Tzaras is a problem, but not Tameh Mace for a private. Now we're going to question that. He asked the elders of Darim, if already the owners of a korban, where all korbanos, we strengthen the owner the rest of the year. Any other korban apart from Pesach, you can send it to the Azorah and ask for it to be brought, even if the person's Azov. Nevertheless, if he's Tamei Mace, we can't bring a korban Pesach. So Oived, the Kohen is doing the avodah Korban Pesach. If he's Zav or Matzorah, he can't do avodah the rest of the year. Eina did. That his avodah should be possible, but the Eved, if you don't have the conditions to allow Tumah B'tzibur, and that's not like the Ziknei Adorim. They say, oh no, Kohen of Tamei, Tamei Mace, and he did the avodah is kosher b'diavad. Right, and furthermore, Shoshana Rebbe's talked about a nazir bringing korbanos, right? And hasitz meratzeh tumas hadam. The tzitz is meratzeh if the blood of a korban, you find out the blood was tamei after it's been sprinkled, the korban's kosher. But ein hasitz meratzeh tumas haguf. If the kohen was tamei, the tzitz is not meratzeh. The korban's possible. Now, what tumah was there here? In time of tamei tumah ziva tumah saras and again. If we talk about these other tumahs, less yachid, you can't say that. The tanina we've learned nitma if the nazir is tamei or the person making korban pesach tumas hatahom. The underground tumah sits meratzeh. Now the Reish and the Sefer talking about the same sort of tumah. If the tumah is the tumah of the body, then we knew about it, the tzitz is not meratzeh. Tumas hatahim, which we didn't know about, the tzitz is meratzeh. You can't say tzaras and ziva. We already know that tumas tahim only applies to mace, not ziva, not tzaras. You have to say with tuma mace, and it says if the person's tamei tuma yadua, the tzitz is not meratzeh, and not like the ziknei darim. They says, oh, the tzitz is meratzeh tumas mace, b'diavad. Not like them. What are the elders of Darim going to do with this? They will explain our Mishnah that the person's tamei, when they come with tumas aguf, nitzvul ba'alei hakarbon with tumas aguf, not the Cohen we're talking about where the owner is tamei, but not the Cohen. Yeah, when the owner is tamei tuma mace, the tzitz is not meratzeh to allow the carbon. And this, even the elders of the south, they agree. They only say tzitz meratzeh is the Cohen, if the Cohen is tamei. But we've learned in the Mishnah, Nazir, that the tzitz is not meratzeh on a carbon of tumas haguf. Now, if he is tamei, tuma mace, now his carbon's pasul, it's not because the tzitz is not meratzeh, it's basically he's not brought the right carbon. If he's tamei mace, his nazirus is nullified, and he has to bring a carbon tuma. He's bringing the wrong one, and start all the days again. In the end, he can bring the right tahar carbonas. So the Mishnah says the carbon's pasul, since it's not meratzeh, it's not talking about the nazir himself. It's talking about the Kohen who brought his karbonos. So you see, if the Kohen was tamei mace, the tzitz is not meratzeh, the avodah is pasul. So what will the elders of the south say? We're talking about the Kohenim who are doing the avodah of the carbon. So we're talking about if a Kohen is bringing the karbonos of a nazir, or the owner of a carbon pesach with tamei mace, the tzitz is not meratzeh to allow the carbon. And the ziknei darim agree that karbonos nazir, the tzitz is not meratzeh on tumas mace of a Kohen. And the carbon is possible b'diavad, and they don't allow the ziknei darim didn't allow it b'diavad, only other karbonos, but not this. Let's see this again. So pasri lei, we're talking about ba'ovdin, right? It's the Kohenim doing the avodah, right? So if a Kohen brings a karbonos of a nazir, right, and the tamei mace, the tzitz is not meratzeh. 1 second. If a Kohen he brings the karbonos for the nazir, or the owner of the karbonos was tamei mace, the tzitz is not meratzeh. So karbonos nazir, the tzitz is not meratzeh on the tumas mace of a Kohen. Right, it's possible. Right, they only allow other karbonos, but nazir they don't. Al da'atei Rish Lakish. According to Rish Lakish, lo shani hi ba'alei miyovdin. There's no difference. Look, whether it's the owner or the Kohen doing a carbon, the tzitz is not meratzeh on tumas haguf, on the person being tamei, right? Whether it's the nazir or person bringing carbon pesach. You don't have to start saying, oh, it's talking about tumas haguf of the Kohen or whatever. No, there's no difference. Okay. Now, we asked a kabbalah against the elders of the south. We said, look, the tzitz is not meratzeh if the person's tamei, carbon pesach, they should bring carbon pesach for them. No. It's not going to be meratzeh on the tumas Kohen to allow the avodah b'diavad. So we asked a kabbalah against them, and we're going to answer this kabbalah. So I'm Rav Yirmiyah. Hareza kabbalah. The kabbalah we asked against the elders of the south, we have an answer for it. Sheyeshalav teshuvah. The inan yachid meimele, they can answer back and say like this. Like, you can't say your kabbalah. Imamata bebalim. Look, tumas mace passes the owner. Shurata kaichan bezakin b'chel. Look, owner of carbon pesach. You can't bring it if someone is elderly and he's not going to eat, or if he's sick and he can't eat kazayis. As opposed to the worker, the Kohen doing the avodah, we strengthen him. If he's sick, he can do the avodah. If he's elderly, he can do the avodah, and that's a proper answer against the kabbalah. You can't tell me that the owner is stronger than the Kohen. No, there are things where the Kohen is stronger than the owner. If you've got an answer, then the kabbalah doesn't start. If you've got a Kohen who's got this additional power which the owners don't have, so you can't tell me, if Tumas Mace passes the owners, kabbalah it must passel the Kohen. No. Now another question against this kabbalah. Again, the elders of the south can say as follows: Like, now it's all very well Tumas Mace passes with the owner, Babalim, B'diavad, because Shemila Zachara Bavada Makminaza, if the owner has a servant who's not had bris milah, he can't bring Carbon Pesach. If the owner is an Orel, he can't bring Carbon Pesach, right? If he's got an Eved Kanani who's an Orel, he can't bring Carbon Pesach. as opposed to the one serving, the Cohen, doesn't have these problems. If his son hasn't got bris milah, he can still do the avodah. So that's again a question against this kavah. You said the kavah chomer doesn't apply because on the one hand the Cohen is stronger than the owner. Since there's more yipur koach to the Cohen than the owner, you can't tell me, if the owner passes tumas meis b'diavad, how much more so the Cohen should pass it. Now, after the Gemara brings these questions of Rish Lakish on the elders of the south, it brings another question on their view. He says the main svara of the Ikna Darim that we learn a Kohen Yachid from Din Tzibur is not right. Because Ilu Yachid, look, an owner, Pesach, Lamed, now how do we know B'diavad? Just like Tzibur as Tamei Meis, they can do Pesach B'tumah. Now what about an individual? Will he be pushed away to Pesach Sheni? So let's see. Ilu Yachid B'Pesach. Look, if we learnt an individual, now of course an individual can't bring Pesach on his if he's tamei, right? An individual, he has to wait a month, right? Bring it Pesach Sheni. Now, if we learnt his din from the tzibur, if you would say, look, just like the community can push away b'tumah, so an individual can, then I could say, okay, Ived, the Kohen as well, the rest of the year, I learn from the tzibur. And since this tumah is permitted for a tzibur on Pesach, he can do avodah with a private korban b'diavad the rest of the year. The sitz provides forgiveness. But since the truth is the Baalim is an individual, we don't learn his din from the tzibur. You can't push away. You can't bring Pesach the Pesach Rishon. Even b'diavad, he's pushed to the next month. So also a Kohen working on a private korban, we can't learn from the tzibur. Very good question. We have no answer. Rav Ami asked, Hahan, Tameh. Now, when the Mishnah said all these Tameh people, the avodah is puzzle, what situation are we talking about according to the elders of the south? But Tameh Tumah Ziva, but Tumah Saras. Tumah is Ziva or Saras. If it was Tameh Tumas Meis, it would be okay. That's what the elders of the south said. But we've learned in the Mishnah there, Mechusrei Kapara, people who need a Kapara, the avodah is puzzle, Zav or Matzera, they've gone in the mikveh, and they've not yet brought their carbon. Now, if already they've gone in the mikveh, hu mechalel, that would be mechalel avodah, if they not bring their carbon. And how much more so if they've not been in the mikveh, like Oshkin, Adjalai Taval, they're still completely tameh, and they're not bringing the carbon. Of course it's possible. So why does the Mishnah tell me tameh ziva tzaras? I mean, it's also mechusa kapara is mechal avodah. You've already told me mechusa kapara on its own is mechal avodah. Definitely these people have got more things. So, and furthermore, when we mention the Tuyayim, what do we treat him? What's the situation here? But Tuyayim in our mace, he was tamei from a dead body, and they sprinkled on day 3 and day 7, and he's not had Harav Shemesh. It's a chami, come and see, it can't be. Because even tamei mace, a proper tamei mace who's not been in the mikvah on day 7, he's not been in the mikvah day 7, Eina Machalel, wouldn't be Machal Avodah. Like Hashke to a Yom and Amay, it's definitely someone who's already been in the mikveh, the tumah has got weakened a bit. He's just not had sunset. He's not going to be Machal Avodah. So you can't be talking about Tvul Yom from Tumas Mace. Ella, you have to say we're passing Avodah for Tvul Yom in Asheretz. He's Tameh B'Sheretz, and he's Taval, and he's not had Harav Shemesh. Isa Chami, come and see that can't be. Because even Tvul Yom in our mace, Tvul Yom from severe tumah, Ein Machala doesn't Machal Avodah. Like Hashke Tvul Yom in Asheretz. How much more so Tvul Yom from Asheretz is Tumah Kala, is not Machal Avodah. So you can't tell me we're talking about Tvul Yom of Asheretz. And you can't tell me we're talking about Tvul Yom of Ziva and Saras, who finished their tumah, been in the mikveh, not at sunset. Because the Mishnah's learns already B'chusik Kippurim of these things is Machal Avodah. So definitely Tvul Yom of these things is Tvul Yom and B'chusik Kippurim. So what Tvul Yom are we talking about? The Avodah is Psula. Amar Shmuel bar Yodan, he said, the Tvul Yom we're talking about is Magai Zavin. It's Kainim who are Tvul Yom, after they were Tameh, they touched a Zav and they went in the mikveh. So they're Tahar when they have sunset, they don't need to bring a carbon. And since it's a Tvul Yom, he's not Mechusik Kippurim, he doesn't need to bring a carbon. So therefore, he's not learned from Kavachim Mechusik Kippurim. The Mishnah has to tell me he would be Mechalel Avodah, and the elders in the south agree he's Mechalel Avodah because there's no Heta but Tzibur for this sort of Tumah. Okay? Now, we answered the question about Tvul Yom. But we didn't answer the question from Tumah. I'm going to bring another answer now, which explains both questions. We're going to answer it. You got it? Rabbanan de Kisrin, Pasrin Kula B'Zav. They explained the whole mission is about Zav. And they said there's three situations of Zav. Okay? There's Tvul Yom. That means the Zav, Shara Achaz. He had one emission. So he's tummy one day, like a Balkari, goes in the mikveh, he's tired in the evening. He doesn't need to count 7 days, doesn't need to bring a carbon. He's been in the mikveh, he's not had sunset. Then you've got Tameh, is referring to a Kohen Shara Shtayim, 2 emissions. He needs to keep 7 clean days. He needs to go in the mikveh. He doesn't have to bring a carbon. He's been in the mikveh at the end of 7 days, but he's not had sunset. That's for the second case. And then Mechusar Kippurim is Shara Shalish, 3 emissions. He needs to bring a carbon on day 8. And in these, the Ziknei Darim agree, the Sitz is not Maratzeh, the Avodah is possible B'diavad. And since a Tameh and Tvul Yom, which the Mishnah mentions, are not Mechusar Kippurim, the first 2 cases don't need to bring a Kapara. So that's why we understand the Mishnah has to tell you to teach them separately. Adat and Ramoi, according to the elders of the South, is it right that someone who's Tameh Maga Azov, you touch a Zov, you're like a Zov, and you pass the Avodah? I mean, you're only a Rishon L'Tumah, you're Tameh one day, like Tameh touching a Sheretz. You know, are you telling me what Rishmuel Bar Yudin said, you're not Metameh Sheretz, your Avodah is Kosher B'diavad according to the elders of the South? And he's like a Zov, he's Mechal Avodah according to them, why? Nishme'inam in Hada, we learn from the following. It says that the Sitz is Meratzeh, it says, V'nasa Aaron es Avodah Kodshim. The Sitz is Mechaper for the sin of Kodshim. It says Avoin HaKodshim, sounds only Avoin HaKrevin, things that are on the Mizbeach, like the blood of a carbon. V'loi Avoin HaMakrivin, and not the Tumah of the Kohanim who brought the carbon. Now, Ma Avoin HaKrevin, what does it mean? What Tumah of a carbon are we talking about? And you can't tell me we Tameh the dam of Tumas Mace. Sitz is Meratzeh Tumas Mace of the Kohanim B'diavad. But the pasuk is talking about a type of tumah that if the kohenim are tameh, the sitz is not meratzeh. So what are we talking about? It must be ziva. The sitz is not meratzeh b'diavad if the kohenim are tameh. And the pasuk says if the dam is tameh, the sitz is meratzeh b'diavad. But how can it be the dam tameh tumah ziva? How can blood be tumah ziva? Dam zav, can blood become zav? He says no. No, it must be, that can't be. Maga zav. It must be things tameh because it touched the zav. Say similarly, when we're excluding the sitz, we say it's not meratzeh avoina makrivin or tumah of the kohenim. It must be tumah makrivin. It means the kohenim who touched a zav. So according to the elders of the Daim, even if the kohen is tameh for touching a zav, the avodah is possible b'diavad. Hada Amra, this tells me that according to the elders of the south, haya hatzibur magai zavin magai zavos. If the tzibur had with tameh they touched zavim and zavos, einan oisib b'tumah, they cannot bring a compass on the state of tumah. According to the elders of the south, as we said, according to Ziknei Adarim, if you got a heter b'tzibur, it's meratzeh b'yachid b'diavad. Maga hazav, the sitz is not meratzeh b'yachid b'diavad. It's because there's no heter b'tzibur, right? And even though it's only like tumas maga and tumah not tumah yotz min haguf, since the source is from a zav, which comes from the body, it's more harmful from other tumas maga, which have a heter with a carbon symbol. To be continued, Rabbi Sai. Now, there might be some difficulty in the next shir being transcribed. People should get in touch with me, maybe, and we'll see what we can do. Might maybe try and copy it somehow. See what we can do. Okay, Shkar.